Okay, thanks, Casey. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Maria Carnamola, and I'm the Executive Director at Gathering Ground. I am a white woman with brown hair. I'm wearing glasses and wired headphones. And I don't know if it's taupe or light brown top that I'm wearing. That can't really figure out, but a V-neck taupe or light brown top is what I'm wearing. On behalf of our entire team, I want to welcome you to today's briefing, Embracing AI for Nonprofit Impact with Rachel Kimber. This is the second briefing we are doing this year with Rachel because last time we had 2 hours with her, an hour and a half with her, and it just didn't feel like it was enough time. So we brought her back due to high demand and high interest in learning more about AI. So welcome, Rachel. We're glad to have you again today. Today's briefing is presented in partnership with the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, and we're truly delighted to collaborate with the center on meaningful and impactful program like today's. If this is the first time you're joining us and you're a member of the center, we're delighted to have you and welcome to Gathering Ground, and we hope that this is the first of many programs you participate in. As Casey mentioned, this session, our briefings are usually interactive, so we'll have the ability to ask questions throughout. Just raise your hand, or if it's something that you don't want to share publicly, you can direct message myself, Casey, or Anaya. Any discussion of it in New Jersey cannot begin without consideration of land and labor. At Gathering Ground, we like to begin all our programming with the land and labor acknowledgement. Both the land and labor acknowledgements can be found on our website, and we'll be reading them today to start us off. Casey, do you want to read the land acknowledgement?
Yep, and I just dropped into the chat for anyone. If you are not sure about the original stewards of your location, wherever that may be in the world, there's a link in the chat for you to discover more about that. So we welcome the fact of everyone sort of deepening their own understanding and experience. So this land acknowledgement is offered by the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation for those who seek to honor the Lenape people and their territory, preceding an event in Lenapehoking, also known as New Jersey. Quote, the land upon which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people lived in harmony with one another upon this territory for thousands of years. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed west and north, but some also remain among the continuing historical tribal communities of the region. The Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation, the Ramapo Lenape Nation, the Powhatan Lenape Nation, the Nanticoke of Millsboro, Delaware, and the Lenape of Cheswold, Delaware. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people in their homeland. We affirm the aspiration, in our acknowledgement, let me try that again. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape chief Tamanend that there be harmony between the indigenous peoples of this land and the descendants of the immigrants to this land, as long as the rivers and creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine. And while this land acknowledgement is the first step, it should not be the last for us. And we encourage folks to get to know indigenous groups in their own region that they may be able to help contribute to and offer thanks for the stewardship for thousands of years that these people have had. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Maria for our labor acknowledgement.
Thank you, Casey. This labor acknowledgement is offered by Dr. T.J. Stewart, Assistant Professor of Higher Education and Student Affairs at Iowa State University. Excuse me. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and the development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge that the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today. For us at Gathering Ground, we read these statements to make visible what has been invisible to many people, particularly people racialized as white. We acknowledge these historical truths of the theft of people and land, enslavement, forced migration, and forced labor. And though this is our history, It cannot and it must not be our future. We are committed to working in community and constant dialogue with all of you in disrupting this fatalistic view and create new norms and new structures for a more equitable world. Before I turn it over to our incredible guest speaker today, I want to tell you a little bit about Gathering Ground and a little bit about the center. Gathering Ground is a multiracial, multicultural, multigenerational, and socioeconomically diverse movement of people committed to taking action that creates thriving and equitable communities. Gathering Ground offers a variety of programs designed to address systemic issues, empower individuals to become agents of positive change. From community engagement initiatives to collaborative learning experiences like today's briefing, each program is developed and crafted with the needs of our community in mind and with the overarching goal of cultivating a culture of equity and justice. The New Jersey Center for Nonprofits is a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to build the power of New Jersey's nonprofit community to improve the quality of life for all people of our state. For more than 40 years, the New Jersey Center for Nonprofits statewide network has come together to share knowledge, amplify a collective voice, get expert advice, and advocate for a strong nonprofit community that protects the greater good in the Garden State. If you're not yet a member of the Center for Nonprofits, we encourage you to become a member. We at Gathering Ground are members, and the membership, I will say, is invaluable and connects you to countless resources and a network of peers doing important work across the state. So you can learn more by going to the center's website, which we'll put in the chat for you. I want to recognize the people who've been working on today's briefing, and then I promise to hand it over to Rachel. The team at Gathering Ground, we have Casey O'Brien, that you've already met, Director of Programming here at Gathering Ground, Anaya Brown, our Communications Associate, and Alyssa Prevost, our Operations Associate, who's not here with us today. And I want to thank Debbie Duncan and the team at the Center for Nonprofits for their help in making today possible. This work is supported by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Geraldine Dodge Foundation, the Grunin Foundation, and the Stone Foundation, and we are truly grateful for their contribution. I want to thank you for all making it a point to be here today. I know we have so many demands on our time, especially this time of year, so thank you for joining us. Let's see. I'm going to tell you a few words about Rachel. Rachel M. Kimber, MPA, is a speaker, technology futurist, and nonprofit executive. She's committed to human-centered, data-informed, and technology-supported grant making, and is passionate about advancing emergent nonprofit practices that support equity, access, inclusion, and technological innovation. Rachel has served on local nonprofit boards and within international nonprofits, both small family foundations and global grant-making NGOs, and has volunteered in various capacities with Peak Grant Making, Technology Association of Grant Makers, and Grant Makers for Effective Organization and Philanthropy New York. Rachel's work has tackled conservation, global health, social justice, performing arts, and humanities grant making. No matter where she's working or what cause she's supporting, she looks for creative ways to involve more stakeholders in the grant making process and to ensure that good ideas stick. To learn more about Rachel and the incredible work she's doing, you can check out her website, rachelkimber.com, and fullcircleimpact.org, which is in our chat now or will be shortly. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our speaker, Rachel.
Gathering Ground, you are impressive. And New Jersey Center for Nonprofits, thank you. And the Center for New Jersey Grant Makers also. Like, what a powerhouse group we have here today in you three. Thank you for having me. We're going to get into the meat. Two things came to mind most immediately, though, as I bring up our share screen is one, we did a land acknowledgement. I care a lot about our planet, and AI is part of the trade-off, right? And so we have to figure out, how do we use the tool? How do we embrace it to drive impact, right? And so that's what we're figuring out. Now, how do we use the tool because it's a shiny new tool, but how do we support our ecosystems of care and balance all of those trade-offs. So just hitting that note really quickly. And then the other is collaboration, right? We just named three wonderful organizations that are part of your learning community. We're not going to go far if we don't do it together. And so I just encourage you all after this 90-minute discussion that you find your collaborative learning groups, find a buddy, chat about it, because otherwise it falls flat. And so I'm here today to try to help make sure this learning doesn't fall flat. Feeling very privileged to be invited back again today. And I have a background in cognitive science. We didn't talk about that. I've been in philanthropy for 20 years. But the reason I get to talk about AI so much right now is because I do have a background and grounding in what it can and can't do in a way that many do not. And so we're going to start moving through the importance of this session is really starting to lean into what are the cases? What does it look like to use this in our real nonprofit workflows? How do we integrate it? Microsoft says that we need to practice for 11 minutes a day, and then we're on our way. And so for today, I'm going to give you some examples and some ideas of how you might start developing your own AI practice. And so again, assuming you're already using the tools, assuming that you have some knowledge about what is ChatGPT, how to do a prompt, and we're just going to go a level deeper. So if you feel like you're a little out of your depth, you'll get that first recording from Gathering Ground, review that one, and then come back to the second recording if you feel like it's coming too fast. So you get to do some self-paced learning. And so today we're really working on applying AI to your work, looking at real world use cases, and then kind of deepening what we're calling prompt engineering. I like to say is just talking to robots, right? It's figuring out how do you communicate with this new player on your team. So we're going to start with a really brief review, looking at the agenda, and then we're going to start digging into cases. And then I'm going to help you figure out like what's your next step. I've done some conversations around AI readiness. As we have time, we can kind of chat about how is your culture looking and what do you think is possible in 2026 based on all we learned today. So quick review. We're not going to spend a lot of time going through what I'm hoping we're already clear on is that these AI-enabled tools are assistive. They augment, they support. You're in the driver's seat. We used to have like navigators that sat next to the driver. We don't have a human that does that. We might have a little, GPS tool that we use now. We're still driving. When our little GPS tool says make a left up here, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm going to go up and I'm going to make a left at the next block. That's you making decisions based on information that the tool couldn't possibly have. Sometimes the tool's going to get it right than you, right? Like, oh, there was a traffic accident. You shouldn't have gone that way. Should have listened to the machine. But often your own knowledge is going to land you with some better decision making. So really acknowledge that this tool is an assistant, it's an intern, it's your co-pilot, literally. It supports your thinking and synthesis. This one's really fun because you can take a lot of data and you can ask your AI-enabled tool, what do you see? Or help me develop this. One of the examples is recently I had all this data and I was trying to put together some subgroups, some subcommittees to work on different projects. Hey, tool, can you help me build these committee groups? For sure. And then I look at what it gives me and it's way over indexed on program, right? Where are the operations people? Where are the administrators? Like this isn't going to work unless we have a good mix. And so that's an example of the tool supporting me. I look at it and I decide, is this good? Is this not good? And that brings us to the last bullet of it requires human judgment and context, right? And so we're going to go really deep into what does it mean to provide context? What does it mean to guide the tool to focus on what you need it to focus on? Okay, so it's not a decision maker, it's not a source of truth, and it's not a replacement for your expertise. And so hopefully that helps mitigate some of the concerns about bias, about hallucination, right? And so we're going to, again, take it a level deeper. So what we did in the 101, you may have ended up with some more hallucinations than you enjoyed using the tool with. We're going to get better at prompting today so that you get better answers based on the context and the information that you feed to your tool. And your tool is ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, you name it, you can use it in this way. So we're talking about large language models And this also will apply to some of the other more specialized tools you might be stepping into. We're not going into specialized tools today, right? That would be Notebook LM, Perplexity, Magic School Bus, right? These are different tools that as you start specializing in the work that you need to do, Gamma, for example, you can partner with the tool differently. Today, we're going to be focused on large language models. And in my case, particularly ChatGPT. So, where I have been working with ChatGPT extensively, much of this conversation applies to any of the large language models that you're currently engaging with. Because the end game is we're talking to robots. How do we talk to robots well? That's what we're going to explore. And so there's three key elements: clear instructions, and sometimes I will point to what I want that end thing to be, right? Instead of giving it 800 steps, I'll say what we're trying to do is get to this end point, right? So giving it the purpose. This is where we're trying to get to, and I'm going to break it into bite-sized steps for you. You want to make sure you define your tone and constraints, right? Are you working on this project for your board? Are you working on it for a website artifact? It's going to affect the type of output you want it to give you. Often when I'm drafting emails, I'll say, make it a little more professional, right? That's a certain audience. Or make it a little friendlier. That's a different audience, right? And so we can start with a relatively generic output and then decide, okay, where do we go from here with this information? And that's your tone, constraints. I need it under 200 words. So the constraints and the boundaries that you set will help you get that better output. The next one is giving it context about your work and your role, right? Are you in development? Are you in fundraising? Are you in communications? Are you senior leadership? That will help the tool understand what kind of a conversation are we having. And so making sure that you've also given it not just information about you as an individual and how you're approaching it with your role, but also what kind of language does your organization use? How do we talk about these issues and problems? We can give our large language model context that helps the tool more closely align with our tone, with our mission, with our vision. And I love this little point at the bottom. When you customize well, AI becomes a true collaborator. And so I've started jokingly saying to people, if they're not getting the output that they expect, that's a user error, right? The tool didn't get it wrong. It's a robot. It's just generating what you asked for. And so being adept at communicating with robots is going to make your AI experience better. So how do we do that? What does that look like? And I will probably pull up a little bit of a ChatGPT demo just to walk you through some of the functionality. But what we're doing is we're telling the robot, what do we want it to do? What don't we want it to do? Where do we want it to focus? The analogy that I like to bring to this conversation is your intern has been sent to the library to go find something for you or draft something or do some research. You didn't tell it what part of the library to go to, right? Do you want the engineering approach to the question? Do you want the architectural? Do you want the electrician's answer? No, generally we want a social sector nonprofit answer. So helping your large language model understand what role you need it to fill is really powerful. And then you can, in the very immediate prompting, give it boundaries. You can also set meta boundaries for the entire large language model. Again, my point of reference will be ChatGPT. This is possible in many of the large language models now, where you can say, for example, no M dashes, no emojis. Try not to hallucinate. Bring sources every time I ask. And then, you still have to verify the sources, but you've kind of laid down the law, right? You've said, this is what I need you to do. Please follow these rules. Again, we're dealing with robots. They should get it. So we're going to practice that today, is making sure we know how to set boundaries and name what it can and cannot do. And then we're going to ground it in your relevant nonprofit context. Sometimes that's as simple as taking the URL, your website address, and telling the large language model, this is how we talk about our organization. This is how we talk about our programs. This is our publicly available strategic plan for the next 5 years. And so as we're talking, if I'm proposing something that doesn't align with the strategic plan, help reel me back in, right? So these are the things that you can do with your tool. And so I'm going to pop over to questions because I've just given you a whole lot to think about. And I'm going to pull up a ChatGPT demo where we can start walking through some of that functionality. Any questions? Anything coming up for folks that you want to make sure I hear, capture, attend to? Yes, Yolanda.
I'm always curious about how to, as you're using the AI, how to bring in your best practices from the analog side. Um, like we all probably have some library skills we got in eighth grade. How do we kind of integrate some of those best practices and the vetting information we have for research when we pair with AI?
Yeah. I think a lot of those real world practices are highly valuable. And that's where it's easy for me to draw analogies because I'm like, we've tackled moments of disruption before and we've leaned on some of those best practices. So one of the four examples I think about is when it was the start of social media and we said, don't post pictures of your children and don't tell it when you're going on vacation. And so for me, just sort of those like precautionary things I do personally is I try not to create images based on people, right? Like I want to protect that. That's something that I just care about personally. And so I try not to play with real images of humans. Another good practice is making sure that you're deleting or cleaning up, right? Like don't, because then the large language model instance that you're in is learning from those previous chats. And so I'm actually going to pull up the share screen of ChatGPT. And what we'll start doing is just exploring the space. And so as we explore the space together, I can show you some of the functionality that I think is really useful. The one I'm going to point to here is the temporary chat, right? So you can click this and it won't be used to affect the memory of all these projects I'm working on, right? And so your large language model, your robot kind of remembers all the things we've talked about. And so if you ask it, what have we chatted about? Can you help me understand what you understand about me? You're going to get some really interesting feedback. I hadn't realized that in ChatGPT, at some point very early in my journey, I had chatted about my kids. And so when I asked it, what do you know about me? What do you understand about me? It gave me this wonderful social sector nonprofit technologist. And then at the end, it was like, and you do this for your kids. You do it for that. And I was like, wow, that was a weird moment. Like how much it understood about me because I had inserted like one or two chats about my children into its memory. So being mindful of what you're putting into its memory. And that's where this temporary function can really help. And so it's kept and then it's lost. It's done. And so when I have a question about why is that plant dying in my garden, I can take a picture, I can ask ChatGPT, and it doesn't go into its social sector nonprofit technologist memory, right? Again, there's no flaw in conflating the two, but your robot is only so smart. And so if you want it to be a useful professional tool, maybe don't mix up too much of the personal, right? And so that's where I've been trying to use temporary chat better.
Hey,
There's a
Rachel.
functionality to start a group chat. And so this is where you can add people and you can have collaborative conversations. This can be really powerful when you're working, say your development person is working on something and you want your executive director to be part of that conversation. So this is an area that you can test that out. The other really powerful functionality as we're trying to give it shape, right? Customize it, is being able to click on these project section. And so everybody's got these projects if we're on the paid version. And what projects can do is allow you to, and I'm actually going to open up one of the ones I've been working on. And so this is my business, right? Like how are we running the business? What kind of information do I need in here to understand? And then what kind of files do I put into the folder to better give it shape an understanding about what are we learning, what are we doing, what do we need to understand about this particular project. And so the project function is a really good place to build those personas. So let's say we're working on, I could have created a project for Gathering Ground, right, for this presentation. So we're going to create a project and I'm going to add some files, right? Like what kind of information do I have? And I'm just going to grab, the first couple that are in here. They may or may not actually align with the project, but for practice, and let's take that one out because that is actually pretty good. So we have two pieces of information. Um, if this were real, I'd probably put in the scope of work. I'd put in my run of show. I'd put in maybe Maria and Casey's background. So, if I have to send Maria a note, I remember, okay, Maria's the executive director, Casey is not, right? And so when we're moving at the speed of light, sometimes that stuff is not fresh in our brain, right? So this is a way we can really simplify. The other way I like using these project files is then you can say, I don't remember if there is a time constraint for the presentations. And I never fix my typos because we're supposed to be efficient here, right? So just leave the typo. The computer knows what you're doing. And it was not very helpful. Sorry, I didn't put good documents in here. But let me go to a different project and I'll do another fun little demo for you. If I come into this one and I say, what is the timeline for ISS regrouping? And it'll give me some kind of an interesting answer. Again, it was kind of a weird question that's not based on a lot, but it's giving me feedback based on all of the information I've uploaded and it's showing me the sources. Right? So these are based on actual interviews. It's based on actual questionnaires and IT audits that I collected. And it's showing me where I might find this information. We did a SOAR analysis for this organization. Again, you're not seeing anything important as far as what is confidential. It's more, this is just the information that I've put into my folders so that I can quickly reference these files, right? All these interviews, all these conversations, I've added these files. And so now I can query them, right? What's the executive director's name? What is their fiscal year end close? What's that one pager I started working on December 11th that I haven't gotten back to, right? So it really is your intern that can help you navigate information. So we went through the project section, really helpful. The other is if you're not that organized and you haven't put projects together, I did start a Gathering Ground chat. And I'm like, well, where is it? I know we talked about this. I know it. Oh, there it is. And look, I worked on it today. That must be the one I'm looking for. So this is the kind of quick search that's more like Google, so you can find things, right? We don't have to organize everything. We don't have to file everything into projects. The benefit of the projects is that you can upload files and be able to reference them for the whole project. For Gathering Ground, and we'll just go into like, what were my notes here? I uploaded documents, right? Probably somewhere in here I uploaded because I asked for a run of show, right? I need a clear run of show. So I uploaded documents at some point. I'm probably not going to find it, but this is the ongoing conversation, right? What are the learning outcomes? This is what we did in the 101, right? These were the 101 objectives. How do I build it going into the next conversation? And so that's a little bit of a walkthrough in ChatGPT. I know it's a lot of information that comes at you. And I didn't share the settings section. Let me see if I can find that really quickly.
And Rachel, when you were done that, there were a couple of other questions that were coming in while you were doing that. So let me know.
Amazing. I figured this would get a little bit meaty. So let me show you where you can do some of those settings. And so at the bottom of the screen, it says Rachel. It shows I'm on Plus, right? I'm on a paid plan. And so that's why I can do all the file sharing. And then here we have, I can upgrade my plan. I can personalize. And so we're going to go into personalization. This is where I said no M dashes, fewer bullets, no emojis. What do you want to call me? Queen, right? Make me feel good. I'm sitting here slogging through the work. Call me Queen. Every time you ask me a question, don't call me Rachel, call me Queen. Occupation, right? You can let it know I'm a technologist. Most of my lens is going to be technology focused, So if I ask it a question and I don't give it a lot of context, it's gonna be like, ah, Queen is a technologist. Let's make sure we keep that lens. Or we clarify, right? Usually I'm a technologist, maybe not today. So if you put this in here, know that it's going to always make this assumption. And the reason I share this is because there was a time I was trying to envision when would you really want to make sure your robot had a very different approach than your usual. And so I was like, well, what if you're a lawyer and you argue the case and you gotta win, right? Everything is about winning. I need to win, I need to win, I need to win. So every time that lawyer goes in and they're putting in queries, the goal is winning. I had a text come through from my dad. Sometimes family gets complicated, right? And so it was one of those where I was like, I don't want to win. I don't want to fight. I just want to answer the text in a calm, cool way. And so if I had been that lawyer who was always win, 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 and didn't give context to say, I don't want to win this time. I just want to have a nice, calm response. It might assume, and it might have given me a very argumentative response to the very gentle message I wanted to convey to my dad, right? So we have to make sure that we're being clear about what kind of an output do we want. Otherwise, the robot goes to default, whatever your default is, whatever default you create with your tool. Reference saved memories. This is because now I can query across my whole ChatGPT instance, right? If I didn't add a file in the right place and I'm like, what is the gathering ground learning objectives? It can search all of my chats and find those for me, even though I didn't create a file and put it all neatly together. And then referencing your chat history. Yes, please look across my chat history and make sure you're connecting dots for me. That's something I need you to do. Any questions so far on this section of personalization?
There were two. One was, are the settings you're showing only for the paid ChatGPT option, or are they also, or some at least also available on the free version?
Some may be available on the free version. Because I'm in the paid version, I lose track. I will share, I did stay on the free version as long as I could. I love teaching nonprofits, and so I like to meet y'all where you are, which is often the free version. But it got to the point where I needed to create files. I needed to, take it up a step. And so I think you all at this point may be at that same inflection point. You're into the 201. You're not a 101 anymore. You might need to invest in a tool so that you have this functionality. 101, you're just in there playing. You're figuring it out. Now you're using it in your workflows. Now you need not playful answers, you need serious, accurate, complete, and context relevant answers.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. There was one other question. Would you recommend using two different AIs, one for personal, one professional? And then we've got some broader questions after that.
Yeah, I haven't made that divide for myself, right? It hasn't been problematic, but I think as you are setting out in your journey, that's not a bad question to grapple with. I don't have a best practice recommendation today. Follow up with me and we can start picking it apart together. But I think there probably is benefit to separating the two. ChatGPT, I started with 2 years ago. It's a very well-trained intern. If you've ever had an intern, you know it's really hard to let them go once you've got them well trained up. So make very mindful decisions as you're stepping in. Another piece of advice is if you're at an organization that's already, say, a Microsoft shop, your organization at some point might tell you you need to use Copilot. So you don't want to train up your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Gemini, if your executive director at some point is going to say, guess what? We all need to get into Copilot because that's what we're paying for. So just, again, being mindful and thoughtful as you move from 101, just play. Just get out there and try the different tools. See if you like Claude, see if you like Chat, see if you like Copilot, right? Try them out. None of them are better than the others. They're all just robots, ones and zeros. They do different things slightly better. You guys can Google all about it. Sometimes what I'll do is ChatGPT is not a beautiful writer. And so sometimes if I need something a little more polished and I don't have time to polish it myself, I take it from ChatGPT and I'll pop it into Claude. Claude happens to have some slightly more eloquent prose than ChatGPT does. So you figure that out. How do I know that? Because I've been in the ecosystem playing with it. The analogy I bring to that conversation, it's like, how do you know what running shoes to get? Well, if you're not a marathoner, it really doesn't matter. Just put some shoes on your feet and start walking. But if you're going to be doing 300 miles a month, you kind of want to know which shoes are what and how they fit you and what they do. And you go to a specialist and get size. You're not there yet. You're at a 201. You just want to pick some Nikes and give it a try. And then in 3 months, if you're like, I hate these, you go to the next brand. But that's the moment you're at in the 201 moment is you do not need to commit to a tool and say, this is it, this is the best. You need to try it out and see what works for you.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. There were just two other questions that are kind of in the same vein. One was about if you talk about your nonprofit, like linking to the website, and then come back later, do you assume it still knows you are the nonprofit? This person uses Copilot.
Yep. And this is like the subtlety and nuance of your setup, right? And so that's where encouraging you to learn and find out these things is part of this conversation, right? You need to determine because Copilot can be set up all kinds of ways. If you have an enterprise Copilot, it's already connected to all of your like your internal documents, right? It's an internal tool that is privacy protected and your organization is paying for. If you're using a general chat GPT and you didn't check your settings to see if you said remember, it's not going to remember. And so that's where just kind of exploring your tool a little bit deeper, right? 101, you're just in there and playing. Build me an itinerary. Show me how to draft an email, right? Like give me some suggestions on subject lines, right? That's 101. You guys are taking the next step. And so that's where you want to explore your tool and understand what are those settings? What do they do? And how do we make sure that whenever you're prompting, it's grounded in your particular context? And so with Copilot, it may already be happening because you have a paid enterprise version. With ChatGPT, if you say in that little setting section, refer to this URL or I work for this organization, and then you test it out and see was that sufficient? Or do I need to create an entire project folder for this particular body of work so I am certain that it has the 2025 version of the strategic plan? Right? So it depends on the level of certainty you want to have, how far you go to customizing your tool.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And then this will be the last question before we get back into your presentation. Are there privacy and copyright concerns with uploading files to projects? Like, can OpenAI use that to train? Does it become part of the data set that ChatGPT can then access for other people's queries?
Yep. So this comes back to how careful is careful enough? Big question, scary question, and I think particularly in our sector, one we have to attend to very carefully. I don't think we've had any massive missteps in my recent research, but Samsung, a private entity, did have a problem with putting proprietary information into ChatGPT. In the for-profit world, proprietary is how you make your money, right? And so they took proprietary information and put it into this very public tool, and Samsung had to shut down ChatGPT because the risk was too high. Right? So that's proprietary. That's how they make money. Like we cannot put things in there that somebody might want to find. That's the caveat that somebody might want to find. Most of the time, folks really are not that interested in what you're uploading and what you're putting in there. However, I did receive that same question from an employee at Human Rights Watch. It's like, well, that is a whole different kind of conversation. You have high risk data, and you work at an organization that likely in this present moment has a massive target on its back. And while you may be very uninteresting, right? You're just the, associate finance person who cares about what you're doing, but you happen to work for Human Rights Watch. You need to be more careful. You as an individual should be very mindful of what information you're uploading into ChatGPT. But it goes back to the social media moment of, does anybody actually care that you uploaded pictures of your children or that you connected your AI workflow to your email? Right? How interesting are you? How careful do you need to be? And then when it comes to enterprise, that's why I'm like, you need a policy, right? That's where we decide what data is inbounds, what data is out of bounds, what is safe to be putting into this tool. And if you're not talking about it as an organization, that's a huge open door for risk. And so I don't have an easy answer. What can you put in? What can't you put in? If it's publicly available, you're safe. If it's so mundane and so uninteresting and there's no PII in it, you're safe. If you don't work at Human Rights Watch and you work at, Save the Cats, I don't know, you're probably slightly less interesting again, right? So it's really kind of calibrating, just like we do in email. Some folks need to move to encrypted emails, right? So Proton, if you've ever heard of Proton, massively encrypted, very safe. Most of us are fine with Outlook and Gmail. So check your settings, assess your ethical comfort with uploading anything into the system, assess whether it's publicly available, and then you have to make your best assessment if your enterprise has not given you guidance. But that's why it's a really risky moment. If the enterprise has not developed guidance, we're depending on individual staffers to make these decisions. So huge call out to, get that policy drafted. It can be a one pager. I just rolled one out that said, don't put anything personally identifying or proprietary into these tools. That's it. Which tool? We haven't decided yet. Which data? I haven't created a list yet, right? So it doesn't have to be a deep dive for the first pass, but you probably want to get a policy moving quicker than not. Okay, we're going to move into a couple cases. I'm going to move through them relatively quickly because I want to make sure we get to cover all the ground that I have laid out before us. Oops, here I am clicking on pictures. This is the first case of just writing and editing support. I don't think it needs to draft your narratives for you. You've probably already written hundreds of them. So what you do is you upload those winning proposals and you say, can you take this information, right? Here's the uploads really into the files, right? You're putting all those PDFs into your project file, and then you're taking the RFP. Here's the RFP, either URL or another PDF. You put it all into that project file and you say, I need to respond to this RFP. We have these 5 successful proposals. Please make an attempt at drafting our first pass based on all the information that I've already written over the last 5 years to win money for this organization, right? You've already done the heavy lifting. You don't have to start from a blank sheet of paper, right? And you also then can make sure that it's in the voice of your organization. Put in your URL. This is how we talk about, right? Again, take your strategic plan. This is the way we discuss whatever the topic is, right? This is the language that we use to talk about. And then you can say, go forth, write that first draft. Once you've got that first draft, I usually do a copy paste into my own Word document and I go through it and I massage it and I, make it sing the way I want it to sing. And then you can edit it. Say, well, this section is beautiful, but I have to get it down to 100 words. Can you help me? You take that section, you put it back into ChatGPT, you say, let's condense it. Does it, copy paste, again, back into your document. The human is still driving, right? You see the human is in every step. You're just not getting a blank sheet of paper. You're starting with a draft. And with that draft, you can go back and edit. You can go back and say, make sure you include this quote that our founder always throws around. Like it's a really powerful quote. I want to make sure it's included. I don't know where to pop it in. Please help me figure out where to put this quote. So editing and writing support does not have to be a generic write a response to this RFP, because then you're just going to get generic. What you start doing is customizing. And so this is where the project files can be really helpful in customizing because you're pulling in your language, the way you talk about the work, and then you're saying, okay, draft me, just like you would with an intern, right? Here's a pile of information, intern. Take it and do a first draft, and then I'll take it from there. Any questions on this case? Feel free to come off mute. I know Casey's swimming in the chat over there.
Well,
I just wanted to say that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren. Go for it.
I just want to say this is how I've used it personally. Like we haven't, as an organization, dipped our toe into this yet. It's just me playing personally with ChatGPT, but it has you don't realize the mental drain, I think, sometimes of that game we play with like word counts and character counts and just meeting whatever those parameters are for a grant proposal. And just like you said, we know we have the language. So like we're often copying and pasting things anyway. And this has really transformed our ability to, like, one, like you said, just write it the way you want to write it. But then
Yes.
ChatGPT has been really great at still getting those same feelings, emotions, thoughts, important facts, and data out, but much more succinctly than we would do it.
Yes. Lauren, thank you.
It's so great. So it's like
And
not
I
only does it
think
save you time, but it saves you like mental exhaustion.
100%. And that's the simple like character count, but you can get really nuanced with tone, right? If your organization, and for some reason, like domestic violence victims, right? Like we don't talk about it like that. We have different language that we use. And this philanthropy, right? This grant maker talks about it differently again, right? So you get to decide, you have agency. What kind of language do we want to use? Do we want to be true to our language and the philanthropy can take it or leave it? Or do we really, 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 really want to make sure we align with their language because maybe it increases the odds of us, getting through whatever tools they're using to assess and review applications, right? So again, trade-offs. We're figuring it out. And the other thing, Lauren, I love to say, we are developing the new norms, right? If we are saying, maybe don't just say, ChatGPT, write me a response to this RFP. Like, ew, ew, like nobody does that. That's just not a good approach. This is the recommended approach. You take your last five, proposals or your last five notes from a meeting, right? Like it doesn't have to be even proposals. It could just be any information that's going to help you respond to the RFP that already exists. And this case happens to be writing and editing. I think it's really powerful to say, are we aligned? Right? Here's our URL. Here's the RFP. Is it worth spending any more time digging into this 40-page call for proposals? Or is it only for organizations in Colorado? We're not even eligible. And I didn't have to read 40 pages to find that out. ChatGPT just told me. Okay, so we're eligible. Now we have like the next 6 months to get this thing done, or 6 weeks, depending on how, much fun we're having. And you can build a checklist, right? I need to write the first draft, and then I need to pass it to my executive director, and then I need to get it over to fundraising so that they can add their piece, and then communication so they can make sure that they get their pass, right? So it can help you build a timeline. So I only have 6 weeks to get this thing done. How fast do we need to move? My executive director needs 72 hours. Build that in. Finance needs 3 days. Build that in. I'm going to have to sit down and draft a budget. I need to do that with finance. Build that in, right? So all of that, again, mental lift of like, oh, I only have 6 weeks to get this done. It's not just you getting it done, it's a whole organization. How do we coordinate everyone? AI can help. This one's really fun. I will not sit with this one very long. I gave Casey like my 30-second speech on this one, which is have one person doing meeting transcriptions, right? That means there's one copy and you send it out right afterwards. And you can say, this was not reviewed. We have not redacted. Everyone has access to it. We're only keeping the full transcript for a period of time before we just create a memo and get rid of it. Because there's also risk in keeping live transcripts. If somebody says something and they weren't thinking about who might look at that transcript, you might not want that on file for any longer than you need to harvest the outcomes, harvest the next steps, and then get rid of the transcript. So having one person record means that there's not multiple copies floating around. And in this moment of heightened surveillance, we need to be careful. And so it's great to have your own personal meeting note taker. If we can step away from that a little bit and have one, especially when it's sensitive conversations, that would be my recommendation. And then immediately harvesting the action items, who do we need to follow up with? Who is supposed to make a phone call? Who is supposed to schedule the event? It just reduces all of that mental load. And then everyone in the meeting can be more present, right? So this is one of those places where it can be super, super helpful to just let the note taker run and then get a little bit reflective afterwards and then bring it to the next meeting. And then also keeping track of things, right? If you're back to back to back to back, it might be nice at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go back to your notes and say, okay, where did I start the day? What do I need to do? What are those action items? And so again, you're taking the mental load from you and putting it into a tool. You don't have to remember. And the more you practice with your tool, the better it gets at extracting those action items, understanding the different personalities and personas, and then helping you preempt what's needed next. So, for example, finance always asks this question at the end of the meeting. Every time they ask this question, I'm picking on finance. I don't know why today. I love finance. But if they have this question that keeps coming up, your AI notes can ping that for you. In the last meeting, finance asked this question. You might want to be ready to address it in this particular meeting. So really having an assistant helping you navigate those conversations. Next case, budget and planning. This one can save you so much heartache at the end of the year. You take your 2024 budget, you take your 2025 budget. Again, assuming that there's nothing in there that's highly sensitive that you wouldn't want in there, redact it if it is, put it into cleaner buckets so there's nothing sensitive. But then you can take those two budgets, 24, 25, and say, draft me a 2026 budget, increase all the line items by 3%, and include a new $50,000 grant that we were not expecting to receive. And now you have a draft. And now you can sit down with finance and say, how does this look for 2026? Instead of weeks of bleeding over the 2024, the 2025, looking at the line items and trying to track them across and then figuring out how do I do that, Excel formula to increase everything by whatever the, cost of living increase. Oh my gosh, it makes my head hurt just saying it. So if the tool can help, seems like a really great place to say, can you just draft the 2026 budget? And then you do what you need to do to massage it, to update it, to fix it. But at least you have a working document and you're not trying to just make adjustments to, the 2025 budget or starting from a blank sheet of paper. And then also you can model scenarios, which I think is so cool, right? What if we get that $300,000 grant we pitched for? Can you draft a budget that shows the 300,000 and then draft one that shows not getting the 300,000, right? Or make a budget where we got the individual contributions over the hurdle that we were hoping to get over, and then individual contributions under the hurdle. Like, what do we have to, adjust if we don't make it? So really helpful to just kind of model different scenarios. So again, you don't have to sit there bleeding over the Excel spreadsheet. And then back to asking better questions, right? I'm not a finance person. I know just enough to be dangerous, but this is where the tool can really help you become more expert, right? I'm not a finance person. What's not working in the 2025 budget that I might want to adjust in 2026? Help me see it. Help me understand how to be a better financial planner. And so again, it's not making the decisions for you. It's not saying this is how you run your nonprofit. It can help you think through, how do I approach these different scenarios? Okay, any questions before I go to our last case?
We have a couple, but I think they're actually going to be best if we hold them until after you've gone through all of your examples.
Yep, excellent. This is the prompt library one, Casey. So that's why I took a little bit of a pause there. So it's really hard to start with a blank sheet of paper. And so I put together a prompt library for y'all. We're going to open that one up right now. But what the point is, it's reusable prompts, right? So you don't have to rewrite the same budget prompt in 2027, right? You're going into 2027. What's that prompt I used last year? It was so good and it got us set. Save it, right? Save it someplace so you can use it again. Same thing with social media. Every Friday we have to do this thing, and every Friday some different communications associate puts in a prompt. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. Use a library. Now we all have the same starting point, and then you can add your flavor, right? This is the associate that, loves emojis. Make sure you put the emojis all over my communication because that's how I show up, right? So you can start standardized so that you can move away from generic and start to customize. So this is what the prompt library looks like. You guys will get this in the slide deck. It's for grant makers and for grant recipients. So I started with a couple grant making examples. And then we move into fundraising, right? You want to develop a thank you email. You want to give it a persona. Who do I need you to be, robot? I need you to be a donor relations officer. You are skilled. You're a great communicator. Your, relationship first. This is how I need the robot to show up. Context, robot. I need you to understand that we just received a very generous gift. We want to do a very kind and thankful, grateful correspondence, right? And so here's some history. Again, no names, nothing personally identifiable, but this donor happens to be going on a trip to Africa next month. Let them know, something about Africa that's cute and funny that I also know, right? Customizing, making it personal, but you're starting with the generic. And then the deliverable. Your donor's not going to read a 500-page essay. They want a nice, sweet, short, thank you. Or you could even say, I'm going to handwrite it. Please draft it, and please make it, so it'll fit in this beautiful card format, right? However many words that is with your handwriting, you can figure that out. And then you can take it and handwrite it. How cool. And then format, right? Making sure that you're crystal clear. How many words? What kind of tone? Here's our nonprofit URL. Make sure that you reference who we are and what we do and just do it in a quick 2 or 3 sentences, right? You don't need to write a whole missive on who we are and what we do, but remind the donor who we are and do it in a friendly, engaging, emoji-filled way if that's your jam, right? And so you're starting generic and you're customizing. And so this is what the goal is we don't want generic. That's boring. That's not relationship based. We want to make sure that we're using the tool to continue to deepen relationship and also offload some of the transactional. So you guys will have access to this prompt library. There's all kinds of, possibilities for y'all to play with. Try them out. Let me know how it goes. Even HR, right? This is a wonderful case if you're in HR and you're trying to develop interview questions. Fantastic partnership in this tool. Learning and evaluation, direct service, advocacy. And then you can take this as your draft and start adding what's relevant to you, right? This becomes your enterprise prompt library now, and you can update and revise and change it. But again, you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about personas. Does anyone have questions about those 4 cases before I go into personas? Okay. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, there's one question that sort of responds to previous stuff we've already talked about. Who, quote unquote, should own, manage, set AI policy, training, and expectations for an organization, and what departments or roles, et cetera, might be responsible for that, in your opinion?
Great question. Anything technology related, I think it's about interest even more than aptitude. So I think it should be a cross-departmental team. I think it needs to have senior leadership buy-in, right? So we need to have somebody from senior leadership who is stewarding the AI conversation. But from there, it should be really cross-departmental, really collaborative, and include people who are interested and people who are skeptical. If you have a point of view about AI, most of us should at this point, you should be part of the AI committee. And the AI committee should consist of all the departments, touch on everybody across the organization, because this is much more cultural than technical, right? The technical is talking to robots. That's as technical as it gets, right? Open it on your laptop, talk to the robots. What has to change is the culture with which we engage, right? And so the culture is, why are we using the tool? How is it driving our mission forward? Is this a good use case for us? And so that's where a lot of the nuance and the muddy conversations come from, is understanding when do we use the tool, how do we use the tool, and then how do we share with our partners how and when we're using the tool. We've touched on personas a bit, and this is going back to how do we go from standardized and generic to customized and personable. And that has to do with working with different personas. So I spoke about project files with use with various clients, right? I take a client, I put in, different information, and I say, okay, let's work on this together. Robot and let's work on this together. However, I have lots and lots of clients. You guys generally work at one organization with different departments that you need to be working with, collaborating with, partnering with. And I say departments, it's really stakeholders. So any stakeholder that might have something to say about your strategic plan, for example, you might want to be able to have a conversation with that persona. And so what this is pointing to is you've just drafted a program budget for an RFP, right? You're in communications or fundraising, development. You're not a finance person, but you developed a budget and you're like, I think this looks pretty good, right? I don't know, I've done this before. I think I did okay. Before you bring it to your finance team, you could save them a bit of headache and say, hey, I'm going to build myself a finance team persona. So those project files, you can start instructing it to say, I need you to really double down on compliance, on risk management, on good bookkeeping that aligns with our ethos. And you build that. And every time you're like, I just did this program budget, I need you to be the finance person. Let's talk it out. Tell me what you see, what's missing, how do I improve this? What kind of questions can I preempt? And you have built a persona in your tool to help you have that conversation before you bring it to your finance team and you're like, I don't know, I don't have answers to those questions. I didn't think about that. What a waste of time, right? So preempt it. Say, I'm going to use my tool, my robot, and we're just going to talk it out before I bring it to the finance team so that I am prepared. I do have answers to those questions. I have preempted some of the issues that finance might highlight. Same thing with your board members, right? Everyone has that board member who asked the same question at the meeting or who has the same concerns or the same, thought patterns. Preempt it. Hey, my board is really risk averse. Every time I go into the meeting, I'm going to get these kind of risk questions. Can you help me prepare so that I'm ready to address those questions? Because I'm not sure I'll have the language, right? I have the ideas, I have the concept. I need you to help me get the language. Let's practice. And practicing, it could give you like, here's some talking points. It can also practice with you, right? You can record and say, I'm just going to hit that record button in my chat GPT. I'm going to talk it through. This is what I'm planning on saying at the board meeting. Practice your script. Okay, robot, what'd you think? Well, you started off strong and then, you got to that first example and it just got a little fuzzy. Let's go back to that and try it again, right? But now you have a practice partner that you didn't have before. So that's where I think you can get a lot of value from the tool is in developing personas and using it to preempt some of the questions or to get the language right. Because language matters, right? I don't speak finance. I don't speak HR. I need help getting those words put together so that we can align more quickly. Okay, this is just more, you'll get the deck. So this is just digging a little bit deeper into how do you develop the personas, why develop the personas, and helping you, grapple with the importance of persona-based response. You step away from the generic. I included some interactive practice. You guys have had so many wonderful questions as we've been moving through that I'm going to give you this as homework. I think you can choose a real task, right? Something from your workflow that you're already attending to, year-end wrap up. Take one of those prompts from the practice library, fix it, customize it, right? Go from that generic and standard to customized and personable. And then once you have your output, take that output and see if you can say, okay, now I'm going to develop a persona. I need you to be that person who sits across from me that always has 800 questions about any proposal I bring forward. I need you to pretend to be that person so we can talk it through, so I can preempt all the problems, so I can already address the obstacles before we go into the staff meeting and they're going to have 800 questions, right? So it's about preempting. And you're not aiming for perfection. It's about experimenting and learning, right? How do personas help you? Maybe they don't. I go in, I do a whole lot of generic prompting, but often my generic prompting is social sector nonprofit technologist, right? I've already taught my intern that that's the lens we're going to take most of the time. This is your opportunity to give it some different lenses and help it drive your work forward. Any questions on this one? Is anyone actually going to do the homework? That's a fun one.
Yes.
I got hands up from Lauren. That makes me very happy. I don't know if I can see the rest of you. Anyone else definitely committed to trying this out, developing some personas?
Yeah, and throw in emoji responses too, if that's quicker and easier for you.
Yes. But I encourage you to try it. It's just about trying it. It's practice and play as you move from your 101 to your 201. So, no, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's just about trying it. And as you try, right, many of us don't have policies. We don't have a way to navigate, like, is this a good use case? And so I give folks a, kind of light touch guidance here, which is basically EDPS, ethical, think about data, think about privacy, think about security. So your executive director always gets the last word, right? So your EDPS, and that's going to help you understand, is this a good use case? Is it ethical? Is it okay to use this data? Can I keep it private and secure? Then go forth. But if you trip up on any of those and you're not sure, you probably want to throw on the brakes. And so you want to protect sensitive information always, first and foremost. You want to watch for bias and inaccuracies. And you want to make sure that whatever project you're using AI for, that you're keeping it human-centered and mission-aligned. What that means for me, human-centered, is are we demonstrating care and protection of our communities through this use case? That's me staying human-centered. Mission-aligned, does this help drive impact? Is this helping me move our mission forward? Great use case. Give it a try. And so the ethical guardrails internally start with your own ethical moral compass. I'm sorry, it's not prescriptive. It's, ethics are very amorphous. When we started talking about ethical AI 2 years ago, my first question was, whose ethics? Right? Some long dead white Western philosopher. I was like, I think we have many different ways to approach ethics. And so it sounds like a big, weighty word. I encourage you all to just turn inside. You work in the nonprofit sector. You know if it's an ethical use case. You know if you can keep that data safe and private. And if you can't, maybe it's not a place to start your AI experimentation. Okay, here's the EDPS. Really driving this one home for you. Ethics, data, privacy, security. I'm doing it on repeat because as I send you off into the world to keep practicing with AI, those are the 4 things you must think about before you try an experiment, before you practice. And again, there is no better solution right now than your own internal compass guiding the ethics. Data, there are some regulatory guidelines that you might need to adhere to, right? GDPR, be careful. India, Mexico, there are other countries that have data protections. We don't, but we want to, as close as possible, think about how would our partner or stakeholder feel if we took this data and popped it into a large language model that is technically public, right? It is technically Times Square, right? If somebody wants to find it, they might find it. And so if your donor is standing right next to you and you're about to put their 5 years of giving history in there, how would they feel, right? Like watching you do that. Maybe they don't want their 5 years of giving history plugged into a large language model. Just pause and think about it. Is it okay to use this data? That question kind of came up already. How safe are our files? Back to the ethics and data. Can we keep it safe? Is it okay? Is it publicly available? Is it accurate and complete? That's another one, right? We don't want to accelerate some initiative that has totally forgotten about the trans population because our data didn't even see them, right? And so if our data is not complete, AI is going to say, accelerate in this direction, and it won't know that we missed a whole bucket. So accurate and complete is actually really, really important when we're talking about data. Privacy, this can start with getting consent. So when we're talking about board transcription or meeting transcription, at the top of the meeting, is it okay if I hit the record button? I'll be using this recorded transcription just so I can be more present, right? So now you've asked for consent and you've given some information about what you're going to use the data for, right? I'm not going to go sell it to somebody. I'm just using it so I can be present, so I can hear you, so I can capture the notes. And then if I had a policy, I'd be like, and yes, the policy is those notes are, I pull a memo out of it, I get my action items, and then I delete the transcription, right? That would be a respectful workflow with regard to privacy and consent. Security is really making sure that you're working in collaboration with your IT department, right? And so, yes, they do need to be a part of this conversation. You do need to have a risk management approach and a risk mitigation plan, right? Management is making sure that you've got the plan. Mitigation is when you got to throw the plan into action. And so, really spending some time with your IT department developing that because something may go sideways and you may need to respond, right? I mean, things happen. For example, you put in some sensitive data that maybe you shouldn't have. You want to let your IT team know so that we can figure out how to redact it, how to pull it back, how to make sure we're being as secure as we can when and if there is an incident. And if you can't protect it, don't take that step. And so my ask to all of you before we go into a brief Q&A is how do we dip our toes in? Where do you start? Choose that low risk task, right? It sounds like Lauren had a bunch. Bring her into your learning community, right? And ask her, like, this is where I work. What kind of ideas do you have? I hope I've given you at least 4 good ideas today, right? 4 cases that you could start to explore. Invite your team. I have the wheelchair disability icon because unless you've got all these different stakeholders around the table, you're going to miss something. And so making sure that you have a diverse and inclusive team to help drive your AI exploration is really, really important. And then create the values circle, right? We're using the tool. Why are we using the tool? How is this helping? Does it align with our values as an organization? Is it a good choice for these tasks and these cases? Or should we say, yeah, we're not using it for that. It just doesn't work for our organization. We'd prefer this approach. We get that the AI can make it more efficient and, make things happen faster. That's not how we want to do it, right? And so really figuring out how does this tool align with your values and then document those lessons learned. Closing the feedback loop is so important because learning is happening so fast right now. So if your communications team develops a prompt in the prompt library and they use it and they're like, it was not good, right? We did not get the social media hits we wanted to. Something wasn't right in it. I don't know what went wrong, but it was. Put it someplace where the rest of your organization can learn. And sometimes that's an intranet. That can be a share folder where you just put, this is what we learned, quick little paragraphs. It can be a spreadsheet, communications tried this, it went well, we'll try it again next month, we'll keep you posted. But if we're not feeding it back into the organization, it's hard to learn what's working and what's not. So closing that feedback loop and sharing the lessons is so, so important right now. Okay, this is pretty much my close here to keep learning, stay curious. I will leave this slide up and just open some question and answers. There's lots of learning resources out there. She Leads AI is a great place for kind of informal AI conversations. N10 and TAG are collaboratively developing some certification and learning components for the sector, so definitely check those out. I've shared with you an ethical AI checklist, something to help you figure out, is this a good use case or should we just kind of slowly step away from that one for now? And then Casey, as I shared, I just had an article come out in the Foundation Review, and I did put a link here. And so feel free to, check this out. It's more relevant to philanthropy. AI and philanthropy is the name of the issue. But what's interesting is the piece that I'm dialing into is around reporting. And I know that has caused a great deal of pain and data extraction and time waste in the reporting for your private grant makers. I'm trying to change that conversation. Let me know what you think, and I will keep driving it forward so we're spending less time on reporting and more time on collaborative learning. And with that, I'll pass to Q&A and back to gathering ground as needed.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. Really appreciate all of this. I know that we had a few other questions in the chat that we were holding until the end. So I'll cover those first while other folks might be formulating their questions. And then we'll invite you to come off mute if you want to, or again, you can drop your question in the chat. We've got another half an hour or so together to be able to really dig into some of your questions. So you know, please take the time to really help dig into these things for yourselves. So one of the questions, I think we've sort of covered it in pieces. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you want to say on it, Rachel. If we ask AI to make us something, what are the ownership rights of said documents, information, et cetera? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this comes back to how you disclose. And so I said at the end, we might get into some of like next year readiness. And so there are many conversations about AI readiness right now. I've broken it kind of into four different sections. One is getting senior leadership to care. Big challenge, big hurdle, right? Senior leadership is dealing with what I'm calling the poly crisis right now. So there's a lot to be juggling and navigating as far as budget cuts and surveillance and data and federal things that are happening. So getting senior leadership to attend to AI is sometimes a hurdle. So that's the first. Once senior leadership is clear that this is something we need to be talking about, they're probably going to want to develop a policy. So that's the next step. That takes some time. As soon as you have a policy, and this is where I caution philanthropy, is they'll spend all this time creating their beautiful and complete internal policy, and they won't think about step number three, which is the disclosure and transparency. And so my fear is that philanthropy will do this beautiful internal, this is what we're doing, this is the tool we're using, and then they show up at the meeting and they just hit record. Nonprofit partners were not consulted. They were not asked for consent. They were not told what the data was being used for. That's not cool. And so, to the question at hand here is how do we disclose? How and when do we share? And that's really complicated. Again, that's a whole step unto itself. And so, there's kind of three approaches right now. Say nothing, have an enterprise level that says all of our emails are reviewed by ChatGPT or something like that, right? Enterprise level, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. And then individually, you as an individual can disclose, I generated that image with ChatGPT, right? Little icon underneath it that explains that. So there is not a consistent and cohesive approach to disclosure. And that's where we need to figure out how do we want our stakeholders to feel about our use of AI. And feeling because we are a relationship and trust economy. If we damage trust and relationship, we've set ourselves back. And so when you're ready, philanthropy, for example, when you're ready to hit that record button, maybe think about the relationships with your stakeholders before you just go and hit record. So getting senior leadership to care, developing a policy, figuring out how you do disclosure and transparency, and then innovating and experimenting and sharing it back to all of us, right? Like we're all learning, we're all innovating, we're all trying things. And if we're not closing the feedback loop, well, it's great that your organization figured it out. What about the rest of us, right? We work on relationships and trust. There's no reason we can't share our wins. And our failures. So as you bump up against those, I encourage folks, write up a blog, talk it into your chat GPT, say, can we pivot this into something that's usable for my friends in the community? And then you say, okay, where do I put this? Well, Council of New Jersey Grant Makers, do you have a place on your blog post where we could share, right? And you just ask the question. We are a sector that runs on relationship. Don't be shy, don't hold back because AI is happening to all of us. And if we're not sharing the lessons, we're not doing a service to each other.
Great. Thanks,
Casey, I'm
Rachel.
sure there's more questions. That was a very long answer. Please keep me moving.
It's great. We actually have kind of two questions, and I know that this is on the minds of lots of people as, an industry that cares about people, our planet, the environment around environmental issues and sustainability. So I'll sort of summarize these essentially to say, like, are you aware of any kind of advocacy initiatives that support policy change to mitigate environmental impact? And do you have any thoughts about folks who don't want to use AI at all, just due to its sustainability effects on climate change?
Yes. First question, I don't have a top of mind answer. I think there are some groups that I'm involved in talking about that, right? I'm a huge, like, we got to advocate. Us individually, we're not going to do it. Collectively, we can start to influence the way we grapple with AI. excuse me, the example I bring is around car culture, right? Cars happened, right? Model T Fords on the roads. We started buying them. They became part of our culture, and now we have cars. So people who don't like cars, who prefer to walk or bike or care so much about the environment, they needed to be involved in these conversations. Otherwise, we wouldn't have emissions control. We might not have road rules and police enforcement the way we do. Folks who've driven in other countries, right? You've seen it. What does it look like when we don't have road rules and enforcement? Seatbelts. Seatbelts were luxury items. They reduced death and injury by 60%. It took people caring, the nonprofit sector, all of us, right? It took people caring to say, these shouldn't be a luxury item. These should be available for everybody. And so that's kind of the precipice of conversation we're on with AI right now. How do we create new norms to develop into new rules? Rules for engagement. We don't have a lot of those right now. And if we have skeptics on staff, we want to bring them to the conversation because the other interesting piece is the skeptics tend to have not just climate concerns, but perhaps they have risk mitigation concerns, privacy concerns, security concerns. These are things that we need to be attending to as we adopt AI. If we're just dreaming and doing, we may miss some of those compliance risk concerns. So it shouldn't stop us from exploring, but we should bring the skeptics with us to help us be clear about what are the trade-offs? What are we managing? Back to the climate question. It really is trade-offs. It really comes down to it's here, Beth Cantor, the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? It's not going back in. It's really messy. And unless we engage with it well, ethically, it's not going to get any better. It will only get worse, probably. And so I encourage you skeptics, I encourage folks who like don't want to have anything to do with AI to rethink their position and to look at previous trends that were the toothpaste is out of the tube. It's an abdication of responsibility to not join the conversation. If we don't join the conversation, the climate is still being harmed. The data centers are still being built. If we join the conversation, we can say, okay, I get it. It's a relatively useful tool, but we can't just pillage wherever we feel like pillaging. And so how do we set some guardrails up? Back to the climate piece. Climate change AI is where I did my initial research on what is the impact of AI on the climate. And so, yes, it is very painful. And in this country in particular, it is very problematic because we are going into communities that can't push back or are, and we've seen it before. My mind is going to Appalachia, right? Appalachia, it's not the first time we have pillaged. And so this is another iteration of that. And so we need to be much more engaged as the nonprofit sector in protecting our communities. All that to say, climate change AI is doing some really cool work analyzing, synthesizing, understanding massive data sets to preempt some of the climate change problems. Where are we going to have drought? Where are there hotspots for wildfires? What does water resourcing look like across this region? And let's use, big aerial scans and bring in these huge data analytics and let's figure out what's the solution so we don't have drought in Kenya next year. Wow, that might take an individual and a whole team a long time to figure out. But at the meta level of AI supporting climate change, or supporting addressing climate change. Sorry, I completely misspoke there. It's interesting to see how this painful tool to the environment can help mitigate some of the mess that we've made. And we're at a point now where any tool to help mitigate the mess we've made might be worth looking at. So I'm kind of speaking out of both sides, but I think my main takeaway is it comes down to trade-offs. And the toothpaste is out of the tube. And so we need to figure out how do we engage in ways that feel ethically aligned, morally responsible, and still acknowledge that the for-profits are off and running. And so if we as the nonprofit sector don't figure out the role we're going to play, it will continue the way it is currently.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Let's kind of shift a little bit back more into some more technical questions. So there was a couple that had come from earlier. And again, folks, keep either putting your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we can also get back to you there. So one of the questions was more around how project functions work and the ability for it to continue learning. So the question is there a way within projects to have it learn different voices based on previous ratings? So for instance, a marketing project where you add in an old copy to teach your brand voice, and a development project where it learns the writing style from past grant proposals and sort of like synthesize
Yes.
too. Okay.
100%. You guys, you nailed it. That's the persona approach. So whoever asked that question, I feel very validated in my teaching today. Thank you. That is a powerful way to move forward with personas.
Great. Beautiful. Another technical question, how do we adapt search engine optimization, SEO, how people find your website through indexing on the internet for large language models? Because we're hearing things about it's different. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, SEO is not something I am that familiar with, right? I'm not communications, I'm not development, and so it's not something I've had to go deep into. But immediately what came to mind is ChatGPT is really good at using ChatGPT. Have a conversation with your robot about how do I maximize SEO, right? And find sources. So I'm not a communicator. I have to do LinkedIn posts sometimes. I pulled in some document that says communications and development says this is the way to do LinkedIn posts so people read them. I brought that file in and then I say, here's my content. Use that file with the guidance on how to create a great post and write my post. Right? So using the resources that are already in the world and at your disposal to come up with those answers. And back to your robot is really good at explaining how to talk to it. So if you're not sure or you're not sure how to craft a prompt, hey, this is my goal. I'm not sure how we get there together. Can we talk it through? Right? And so really trusting that your robot can be a thought partner and collaborator is probably the next step for many of you, is figuring out how do we augment, how do we support what you already are moving on, and you just need the tool to either validate or, write the thing a little bit faster than you could.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And I'll just throw in here for folks a couple of things that Rachel said in her first workshop with us, which again, the recording's on our YouTube channel. We've thrown the link in the chat. We'll send it out to you along with all of the resources. But a couple of things that you said in that first session that really stuck with me as super helpful is after you write your prompt, ask ChatGPT or whatever platform you're using, ask me 3 clarifying questions about what I've just asked you to do. Because then it helps you realize, oh, I was not being as clear as I thought I was. And that has helped me a lot in the experimentation that I've done. The other thing that you said that I think, again, sort of speaks to that sustainability piece was you used the analogy of bringing a chainsaw to a surgery when what you need is a scalpel in terms of the amount of data that is being sifted through when you write a prompt and how learning to shrink that could help with energy costs. So I don't know if you want to say anything more about that or if that's even still a metaphor you use, but I remember that one stuck with me. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, Casey, I clicked on your link and now it's playing in the background. So just give me a second so I can pause it. That's what I get for going into the chat, guys. That's why I'm not doing it today. It's the end of the year and there's just too much in all of our heads right now. So yeah, I mean, chainsaw versus scalpel. That's exactly right. And so I also have Casey moved into even priming, right? So that's a psychology term that we use to say, how do I get you ready to eventually answer it the way I want you to answer? And so what I started doing is I'd input an article. Assess this article. Tell me what the thesis is. Tell me the 5 main points that the author makes. Okay, you've got that article. Can we look at an article that I wrote and see how the themes align? Okay, great. Now we're going to draft an article that aligns these 2 things. Okay, now I'm going to bring in the writing guidelines that say it has to be under 800 words, right? So I've gone through a bunch of little bite-sized steps to make sure I get exactly what I want. Because if I had put in, here's this article, here's my article, here's the writing guidelines, I don't know how it would have gone, right? So I've learned to just break it into little directives and then I get better outputs. And so I think back to, the chainsaw analogy, draft me a budget for 2026. Generic, not helpful. Where's the context? Where's the, this is what we're doing, this is what we're thinking, this is what last year looked like, this is what we hope next year looks like. You have to give it more to go on. If you just start with that short generic, you're probably not going to get a great output.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And I'm still seeing a few more questions coming in here. One of the other questions that came up, and folks, please feel free to raise your hand. This is the opportunity to ask questions yourselves. I don't need to do it for you if you're ready and willing. So one of the questions was about the strengths of different AI platforms. So how can we find out which ones are better suited for our needs? Because you mentioned like maybe ChatGPT is good for one, Claude might have some more sophisticated language in your opinion. Which learns more from your specific prompts and information versus scanning the web for data? What's more technical versus creative? Do you have any general wisdom on how to figure that stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I think it comes down more, I mean, it's so nuanced. And I think that's probably what it boils down to, is it's like asking, do you use Firefox or Chrome? I mean, if you're super, super technical, there's really good reasons to go one way or the other. If you're at one, I would say try some different things out and see what you get. And it's about you practicing and learning and testing because the models are also changing so quickly. So my ChatGPT Claude example, that's from like 3 months ago. I'm not sure if it still stands. I would have to go test it myself and see. And the speed at which the models are changing, I'll give you a silly example. Over the summer at some point, I think right before ChatGPT 5 was dropped, I was in the car with the kids and we were singing some silly song. And I was like, I need the lyrics. So I opened up ChatGPT. Can you give me the lyrics to this song? ChatGPT had just gone through an update. And I was like, that's license protected. I can't give you those lyrics. So I was like, oh, fine, I'll just open up Google, right? Like it's out there. I know it exists in the world. If you don't want to give it to me, that's fine. And so we've gone through a couple of those iterations now where there are new models, there are new tweaks that happen. And so to keep up with the learning, I would say find some of those experts either in LinkedIn or and follow what they're saying, follow what they're learning because that's where I get a lot of the information too, is apparently ChatGPT also went through another refinement where the responses were going to be more conservative leaning. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I don't know what that means. I haven't seen it hurt or affect my work in any kind of way, but through the interwebs, I heard that there was some kind of an update that kind of clicked it a little bit further to the right. I felt it when I couldn't get the song lyrics, right? So sometimes you might not even notice that there's been an update. Other times it's very obvious and very clear. And so I think just kind of keeping up with what's changing, why is it changing, and figuring out, who's your favorite expert that's going really deep into the various tools. That's not me. And I also encourage you to keep your ecosystem of tools relatively small. Has anyone had the privilege of training an intern? Has anyone tried to train like 5 interns all at once? Yeah, don't try it. So start with your one tool. Get comfortable training that one tool. Get comfortable talking to that one robot and then see, okay, what's the next robot that I want to, increase efficiency with? And so what that looked like for me was ChatGPT for a long time, right? Me and ChatGPT were learning how to work together. And then a really big body of my work is developing presentations. And so that became the next area that I needed to look to find efficiency. And so I looked at Gamma. And that was really chatting with people. What are you using? How do you use it? Why do you use it? And then learning collaboratively. And that's why it's so important right now to add your 2 cents to the conversation because that's how we're learning. We're learning through talking to our colleagues, from listening to the experts, and then sharing that information back around. I also encourage you to hang out on the N10 webpage. So much great information there. They have an AI resource hub. That's what I've got linked in the deck for you. And they're cranking out best practice information to support our sector right now. And because N10 has been such a powerhouse on that front, TAG, the philanthropic equivalent, Technology Association of Grant Makers, has partnered with N10 to develop their own certification course. So as far as sector-specific references to go and keep learning, N10 and TAG are really powerful places to check out.
Wonderful. So folks, we've got about another 15 minutes left before we're gonna close out for the day. Are there any other use cases that folks are curious about? I believe we've tackled all the questions that have come through the chat so far. So if you have a question and you want to ask it, please feel free to raise your hand. And to some of the other points that have been made over the course of the conversation today, using the AI to help you build some of the tools you need, like asking GPT, how can I want to write a prompt that does this. Can you write the prompt for me and take a look at it? Or I've been playing with creating an AI policy for Gathering Ground using the platform to help me craft that, and then having to tweak it in order for it to kind of fit non-technologists, who are in the space. So Yolanda, yes, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
And then I
No,
actually have one after Yolanda too.
Great.
no, I was just grateful for the opportunity to learn today. And this presentation made me think like the technology, what came forward was that the technology is helping nonprofits serve the mission versus the mission serving the technology. And so that kind of human first intellectual discourse that came through today was very exciting. And thank you very much, Gathering Ground and Rachel.
Yes. Thank you for that, Yolanda. And it's makes me think of like wag the dog, right? Like
Mm.
we decide when and how we're going to use the tool. It doesn't need to be every instance. It does not need to be every workflow. Um, and I think that is probably a wiser approach for many of you is to figure out where does this help accelerate our impact and our learning. I'll share another framing. So in the Foundation Review article, we talked a lot about efficiency. That's why most of us come to the AI conversation is we're looking for efficiency. There's also effective, expansive, and equitable approaches to using AI. And so that equity piece should flow through everything we're doing, right? That's what our sector is grounded on, is relationships that are equitable and can help us drive impact. What effective is looking at is I gave an example of using an AI-enabled note taker. That seems like a great efficiency use. And in many cases, that is true. There was a group that was trying to use note-taking transcription where they were virtual and they were in person and people were talking over each other and points were getting, it was a hodgepodge mess. And so the notes that the team member, the staff person who was responsible for transcribing the notes into something usable for the organization was spending more time pulling apart the transcript than if he had just sat there jotting down some of the relevant points that he heard in the meeting. So efficiency, grab all the notes. Effective, did it actually save us time? And, is this a great use case for our organization? Expansive is looking at, could we bring more people to the conversation? Back to the note transcription. If you have accessibility needs, how cool to be able to say, well, AI can help us meet those accessibility needs. We're much more expansive now because we had an AI-enabled support to bring in. And then underneath all three of those is always equity. If it's efficient, is it equitable? If it's effective, was it equitable? Expansive should be driving equity. So it's a neat framing to think about inroads for your organization to use AI because it's not all about efficiency. It's not just about doing things faster. It's about how do we do it better and more inclusively. I see we've got some hands up, so I'll let y'all jump in.
So Maria, I know you were next, and Yolanda, I don't know if you've got another question. So if you do, great. If not, then we'll get your hand lowered, and then I see Craig.
Yeah,
So,
I'll wait. Let's have Craig and Yolanda put her hand down. Okay, Craig,
okay.
go right ahead.
And Craig,
Or
you're on mute, so just feel free to come off mute and ask your question.
Oh, it looks like he might be slightly frozen, actually.
Oh no.
That's all right. Oh,
Am I
here he comes.
back?
okay.
There
Okay.
we
Yes.
are.
Oh,
Oh, did he come back and dropped? Yeah, there was
we're
something
back.
going on there.
It's all good. We had one other clarifying question that came in on chat. So someone was asking about ownership material created by the ownership of the material created by AI. So if someone uses it to create writing, is it their IP? Can they copyright it? This person said
And
mostly. I've said no, but she's curious.
yeah, I love it when we get into like these super muddy cases where like we don't have rules. We're literally developing the norms. And so I think that's one of those muddy cases. I don't have a quick answer. Let's talk about it. Let's pull it apart. Feel free to shoot me an email. Um, when I was asked about transcription for board meetings, I had to develop best practice for all the philanthropy grants managers who were like, can we record? How do we record? When do we record? So that's one of those areas where, we have to develop the norms and the rules together. Craig, I see you're back if you'd love to jump in there.
I was just responding to what you had said about the effective and efficiency of recording at meetings and a cautionary tale of making sure the technology in the room is set up so that the microphones are close to people that they can actually get the transcription available because the one that I was doing, one microphone in a computer at the one end of the room, it was really difficult. So like it's thinking through even that silliness of a process of like you got to make sure that the voices going into the recording are clear enough to be able to be transcribed.
Yep. Exactly. And Craig, that was the example where we had, it was virtual and in person, and it was just not a great use case. It didn't work very well. And I think that's the challenge with any disruptor is that we really have to think through the workflow slowly. And that's why that transcription one I'll keep pulling up for philanthropy because I'm like, guys, you can't spend all this time working on your internal policy and then show up and your nonprofit partner feels uncomfortable because you're just clicking record. Like that's not okay. So we need to be on this journey together and we need to be developing. I keep going back to the norms and the rules, but that's our mandate right now. And that's where, skeptics, please don't lean too far back because otherwise, the norms and the rules that we create might not include the wonderful thinking of the people who are more compliance or climate or risk minded. We need everybody to join these conversations to come up with the good answers
Right.
and good answers for our sector, right? The for-profit sector has a very different approach and a different mandate. So, in order for us to navigate this moment, we have to figure out what matters to us. How do we want to use this tool? And how does it support our mission and our impact?
Right. Uh, so Maria, why don't you go ahead and ask your
Yes.
question?
Okay.
Because there aren't
Thanks,
any
Case.
right immediately. Yep.
I don't want to take any time away from folks, but if there aren't any other questions, I'd love to ask Rachel. One of the concerns that I have as the ED of an organization that is committed to equity and justice, I love the suggestions about using AI to help with grant writing. But I'm curious because I've been reading some stuff and I know you live in this world. So I'd love to hear if you've learned or heard anything, when we sort of use AI to help with the grant writing, the language organizations like ours would use has equity, justice, diversity, inclusion. Does that in any way make us vulnerable under the current political climate to sort of in a sense, put a target on our back? And are there any concerns about opening us up to those sorts of that sort of scrutiny?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Maria, because it is a really high risk moment. And so that's where as you're again moving from the 101 to the 201 practice, if it's publicly available, right? Your 990, that's out in the world. Your strat plan, that may live on your website, right? There's enough information that's publicly available. I would say start there until you've gotten comfortable with your security settings, until you feel that you have a strong enough understanding in what might get picked up and what might not get picked up. I think we're over indexing a little bit on the privacy fear. And the example I go back to is the same one that I taught with social media. Like, do we not put pictures of our children up? Do we not tell people when we're going on vacation because they're going to come and rob our house? I think we saw that those fears were not so relevant. I mean, pictures of our children, yes, we should definitely be thinking about that a little bit differently. But the evidence of social media, where we said, we're going on vacation and nobody robbed our house. Now we all take pictures from the top of, whatever mountain we've climbed and let everyone know we're having a great time. And so I think, yes, caution is warranted, but I haven't heard any evidence of someone's house being robbed because they said they were going on vacation. Same moment now. I don't think unless you are Human Rights Watch or Elon Musk or you have, a presence that someone wants to dig into your life. Otherwise, I think about it like walking through Times Square, right? If I dropped a receipt or if I dropped my W-2 in the middle of Times Square, nobody cares. I'm not a person of interest. I don't work at an organization that's of interest. So, again, kind of using your best understanding of what might catch an eye and what won't. But I don't think dialing back from certain words or certain language, I think it's like not using certain words as you're passing TSA, right? Like that's obviously just don't, and it comes to mind so easily because I had to literally teach my children that recently, right? Like don't say it. We'll end up in a little room and it won't be fun. And so same thing with your approach to your AI usage, right? If you say it and TSA happens to hear it, like just don't then, right? Like protect yourself as you feel comfortable. So I don't have great guidance on which words to use, which words not to use. I think it's proceed with caution until you have determined that no one's going to rob your house while you go spend a week in the Caribbean. It's just highly unlikely.
Great. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'm not currently seeing other questions come in. So if someone's still formulating one and thinking about it, absolutely raise your hand. But I'm going to take this very brief moment to put a plug in. I'm dropping into the chat right now a feedback form. If you can please take time to fill this out. As for those of you who know Gathering Ground, we take this feedback seriously. We use it to improve and update our programs that we offer back to you because we want to stay relevant. It's also really helpful for speakers like Rachel, which we want to share. If you loved it, great. If there's things that you want to see different, great. Like that's important, really important context for all of us to continue being useful. So we would just really deeply appreciate it if you're willing to fill out that feedback form for us and take a few minutes right now while you're still in the session if you need to, if you have to jump to something immediately at 4:30. But just want to leave it open. Any last burning question right now that you just want to ask because you've got Rachel on the phone, as it were. Oh, thank you, Yolanda. That was fast. Love you. That's great.
And as Yolanda's asking her question, like no question too small, no question too big. I'm happy to, make an attempt. Feel free to ask.
I don't have a question, but thank you.
Yeah. Yolanda already completed the feedback form, so she's on it, which is fabulous. One of the many reasons why we love Yolanda.
I have this is Erica. Sorry, I couldn't type fast enough, so I'll just come off mute. I guess I'm just like in the no question too big. Do you have any thoughts about like the worst case scenario? Like folks that are worried about this crashing the economy, depleting water, like what do you say to that? What are your thoughts on that? How likely is any of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm terrified about all of it. That's why I'm out here teaching you all because I'm like, if anyone can solve these problems, it's the nonprofit sector. If anyone can come up with solutions and advocate for regulation, it's y'all. And so if I can at least give you some grounding in what the tool can and cannot do, so you can keep doing your great work. And then as you can start to explore, like, what does it look like to say we're not okay with this? Or to double down on some of the made by for our sector. So I'm not selling anything, but Change Agent AI, the change.ai, I think is the website, is homegrown, right? It's a bunch of social sector folks who said we need a tool that feels safer and more collaborative And so that's what grew out of the conversation about we don't like ChatGPT, we don't like Elon Musk, we don't trust them, right? Like if you don't trust the CEO, maybe find a different tool. And so I think that's what the social sector is starting to do. And I think that's a really exciting moment. And so the Armageddon, I read Walter Tevis' Mockingbird. I don't know if anyone's heard of that book. He also wrote Queen's Gambit and The Man Who Fell to Earth, a real sci-fi futurist from the 70s, 80s, whatever that was. And pretty scary future. And what happens in Mockingbird is that humans have abdicated all of their responsibility to robots. Spoiler alert, the robots get bored and they just want to get rid of the humans. So yeah, I'm pretty scared about what could happen, and that's why the toothpaste is out of the tube. I can't make the thing go away. I can educate all of you about what it can do so you can keep doing your missions, doing awesome impact work in our world. And you might decide to advocate for some regulation for practices and tools that are by us and for us instead of delivered to us by the for-profit sector.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
You're welcome. Thanks for the good question. And check out Mockingbird if you're scared and you don't know what agency and maintaining agency means and what happens if we let go of that agency. That book is a pretty fantastic dystopian reflection of what's possible. So join the conversation. Don't sit back on your laurels. If you love it, if you hate it, AI is a topic that is not going away, and we need to figure out how to engage with it effectively.
Right. Thanks, Rachel. And I think with that, we'll start to bring it to a close. So I'm going to kick it over to my colleague Maria, and for questions that are coming from the chat. Yes, any of the resources that are shared in the chat, we will share out next week with the recording, the slide deck, the prompt library, and you'll get all of that stuff.
All right, thank you. We have about 5 minutes. I really just want to, we might end a little early. I want to thank Rachel Kimber again. Thanks for joining us. I mean, we've spent another 2 hours with you, and I know there's still so much more that we need to learn and so much more that we want to explore. So we'll all be doing our homework and continue to practice, 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 and let's stay connected, Rachel. I know there's lots of interest, lots of people with questions, and as we practice, we'll have new questions for you. So hopefully we can bring Rachel back in the new year and do some more work together. So please stay connected to Rachel. We have all the links on in the chat for you to be able to get in touch with and follow her work at her websites. Please stay connected with us. If you haven't, join our newsletter, learn about the incredible program we have lined up for 2026, starting with a briefing in January on worker self-directed nonprofits. Really excited to bring that to you. And again, if it's the first time you're joining us, we hope that you connect with us again and join us for future programming. Also, please, please, please connect with the Center for Nonprofits. Thank you, Debbie and the Center, for co-sponsoring this briefing with us. It's been great. We hope to do more of these with you in the future. We wish you all the best. Thanks for making time to be with us today, and happy holidays to all of you. And we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Thank you.